After a decade of forced stillness, Egypt was eager to move when Ahmose came of age in 1529 and assumed command of his army. The long-awaited final campaign could finally begin. The most vivid account comes not from a distant historian, but from someone who was both present and actively involved in the fight for Ahhotep. Ahmose, son of Abana, was among the most devoted and enthusiastic soldiers under the Theban king. His father had also served in the Theban military. Raised in Nekheb, a firm supporter of Thebes, Ahmose likely grew up with unwavering allegiance to the Theban cause ingrained from early childhood. Choosing the path of a soldier, he began his career as a marine aboard the ship Wild Bull. In time, he was reassigned to another vessel, Northern, which was part of King Ahmose's naval force during the first siege of the Hyksos stronghold. While the Theban fleet blockaded Ahhotep to prevent the Hyksos from escaping, the king led a meticulously organized campaign through Middle Egypt, advancing toward the delta's tip. The initial objective was both strategically and symbolically important: Memphis, Egypt's traditional capital since the state's founding. The next key target was Unu, the sacred city of the sun god Ra, which also fell with surprising ease. With these victories, the Theban forces could now lay claim to being a national army, divinely endorsed by the creator god. Meanwhile, at Ahhotep, Ahmose joined a new ship named Risen in Memphis, a title commemorating the capital's capture. Encouraged by their fellow soldiers' successes, the Marines carried out a bold attack on the main Nile channel near the Hyksos fortress, managing to kill several enemy fighters. The slow-grinding war seemed to favor the Theban side. For his courage, Ahmose was awarded the Gold of Honor, the first of 7 such distinctions he would earn during his exceptional career. A second marine offensive had to be aborted when the king called his forces to engage in a fierce battle south of Ahhotep. As the Theban ground troops approached their ultimate target, they began encountering stronger resistance. The final step in King Ahmose's strategy, before launching a full-scale assault on Ahhotep, was the seizure of Sharuhen, a key border fortress that had once played a crucial role in national defense during the 12th dynasty. 3 months after capturing Unu and following a brief siege, Ahmose's army succeeded in taking the fort. With Sharuhen secured, Theban troops could now block any Hyksos attempt to escape from Ahhotep. Apipi and his remaining followers found themselves ensnared. Thanks to a meticulously executed strategy, the final outcome was inevitable: Ahhotep had fallen. This brief statement from Ahmose, son of Abana, perfectly captured the Theban triumph. Most of the city's Asiatic residents met swift deaths. Those who managed to flee were intercepted at the borders by Egyptian forces. A handful of Hyksos may have reached the relative safety of territories under their control in Palestine, but King Ahmose was not finished with them. Intent on eliminating any refuge for Egypt's former oppressors, Ahmose led his troops across northern Sinai and laid siege to Sharuhen, which was the primary Hyksos stronghold in the Near East, both politically and commercially. The Egyptians maintained the siege for 3 years until the city ultimately surrendered. A loyal garrison was stationed there to secure Egyptian authority, as had been done earlier at Buhan. To further cement control, an additional military force was positioned in nearby Gaza, now renamed the town the ruler seized, a deliberate show of dominance. Ahmose had achieved a comprehensive victory. Following a brief campaign along the Palestinian coast, where he destroyed several towns to instill fear among the locals, Ahmose returned to Egypt in triumph. The foreign occupiers had been expelled, and the nation's unity was restored. Driving out the Hyksos and establishing a defensive buffer in the north were important first steps, but Ahmose understood that lasting prosperity required more than military security. Egypt also needed renewed access to gold, which meant reasserting control over Nubia, particularly the gold-rich areas beyond the Second Cataract. This became the central goal of the latter part of his reign. Buhan was already under Egyptian control and served as a useful staging post. However, the kingdom needed a fortified base closer to the mines themselves. Ahmose aimed to surpass the achievements of the great conqueror Senusret III by extending Egypt's border even farther south than Semna. A prime location revealed itself in the island of Shat, situated between the Second and Third Cataracts, at the heart of the Nubian gold region. As one of the largest islands in the Nubian Nile, Shot offered ideal conditions for both settlement and fortification. On his sole campaign in Nubia, Ahmose took the island, established a military headquarters, and built a massive fortress enclosed by a wall 15 feet thick and strengthened with buttresses. Strategically perched on a sandstone ridge overlooking the eastern branch of the Nile and a broad stretch of the riverbank, the fortress commanded an impressive view. A sandstone quarry was opened on the island to supply construction material for the stronghold and other royal buildings in Lower Nubia. To further solidify his presence, Ahmose had a statue of himself placed in the temple at Shot, serving as a symbol of national pride and a rallying point for defending the new southern base. With Egypt's dominance now stretching from the Levantine coast to the upper reaches of the Nile, Ahmose proudly declared that his slaughter is in Upper Nubia, his war cry in the lands of Phoenicia. Egypt had regained its greatness, its people liberated from foreign rule and the looming fear of invasion. Yet not everyone basked in the national celebration. The idea of freedom meant different things to different segments of society. For the monarchy, restoring order signified a return to traditional systems, where the king stood at the pinnacle of power, supported by a loyal and obedient population. For the common people, however, Egypt's renewal signaled the revival of authoritarian rule. Still, some individuals were bold enough to resist the growing dominance of the Theban monarchy. Shortly after Ahmose secured Shot Island and began his journey northward, a small uprising emerged, led by a Nubian rebel. Taking advantage of the king's temporary absence, the insurgent launched an attack. Ahmose rallied his troops, captured the rebel alive, and likely sent his captured followers to toil in the Nubian gold mines. This act of rebellion, though futile, may have inspired a more serious challenge to the king's authority. A second revolt soon broke out, this time under the leadership of an Egyptian named Tetian, who may have been related to the former governor of Nefertari. Titian's resistance attracted many supporters and posed a genuine threat to the state. Ahmose responded without hesitation or mercy. The king had Tetian killed and his followers eliminated. These dissenters had made their move and failed. It would be 5 centuries before another uprising would openly challenge Egypt's monarchy. Alongside these political challenges, Egypt also faced natural upheaval. To the north, the Minoan civilization had just suffered a catastrophic blow from the volcanic eruption of Pharaoh. The eruption buried the colony of Ahhotep in volcanic ash, while flaming debris rained down as far as Crete, destroying homes and crops. Weakened by famine and social turmoil, the Minoan world suddenly appeared vulnerable. This did not go unnoticed by the small but ambitious city of Mycenae on the Greek mainland. Around the same time, Egypt faced its own environmental crisis. Although likely unrelated to the Pharaoh eruption, a powerful storm swept across the land, causing extensive damage. Determined to address this sign of divine displeasure with the same vigor he had shown in suppressing rebellion, Ahmose ordered the repair of flood-damaged structures and the replacement of temple furnishings, ensuring that the country was restored to its former state. In chronicling his restorative actions, the king drew a parallel between the destruction caused by the storm and the recent devastation brought by the Hyksos. His message was unmistakable: regardless of the source of chaos, Ahmose, as the rightful king and defender of divine order, would restore balance and stability to Egypt. With Egypt's borders secure, trade routes reopened, access to gold restored, and internal dissent quashed, Ahmose might well have considered his work complete in restoring the authority and grandeur of the Egyptian monarchy. Yet his ambitions extended beyond politics and economics. He understood that ideology could be an even more powerful tool for unifying the nation, provided it was wielded effectively and resonated with the Egyptian worldview. Ahmose's own life experience had shown him the strength of family ties, a sentiment likely echoed across the towns and villages of Egypt. As the kingdom, or at least its rulers, once again enjoyed peace and prosperity, Ahmose began to elevate his royal family to the center of religious life throughout the land. This move would become one of his most lasting accomplishments, and would go on to shape the identity of his entire dynasty. On a personal level, Ahmose had compelling reasons to honor prominent family members publicly. Having come to the throne as a child, he had relied heavily on his grandmother Tedishri and his mother Ahhotep to govern in his stead. Ahhotep, with her impeccable royal lineage, held unmatched legitimacy to perform this vital role. The highly endogamous nature of the royal family, in which Ahmose's parents were full siblings, both children of Tedishri, was mirrored in his own marriage to his full sister, Ahmose-Nefertari. This concentration of power within the family may have served either to emulate the divine brother-sister pairings of the gods, or to eliminate competing claims to the throne. Regardless of its motivation, the result was an exceptionally tight-knit royal household where women held considerable influence. Ahmose's insight lay in transforming this dynastic intimacy into a form of national worship. At Abydos, the ancient royal necropolis and a key site for honoring ancestral kings, Ahmose built a pyramid temple for himself adorned with depictions of his triumph over the Hyksos. Nearby, he constructed a shrine dedicated to his grandmother Tedishri. At the heart of this complex stood a grand stela bearing the words, "His Majesty did this because his love for her was greater than anything else." This statement reflects the enduring affection between a grandson and the grandmother who had helped raise him, while his mother managed affairs of state. For Ahhotep, the king expressed even greater gratitude. He erected a large commemorative stela at Ipizut, the temple of Ammonius that was fast becoming Egypt's primary religious center. Alongside a list of his generous offerings to the temple, the inscription called upon all Egyptians, both present and future, to remember Ahhotep's remarkable contributions. Offer praise to the Lady of the Land, the mistress of the shores of Ahhotep, whose name is renowned in all foreign lands, who leads the people, the king's wife, sister to the sovereign, the daughter of a king, noble mother of a king, the wise woman, guardian of Egypt. She brought together the nation's leaders and protected them. She recaptured fugitives and reclaimed deserters. She calmed Upper Egypt and subdued its rebels. The king's wife, Ahhotep, may she live. Let me know if you'd like this edited further for a specific audience or tone, such as for a book, exhibit, or documentary script. This passage is a remarkable tribute to a truly exceptional woman. Beyond simply noting Ahhotep's role in maintaining governance, the lines clearly suggest her active involvement in suppressing Tishan's rebellion and restoring order across Egypt. The inclusion of a necklace of golden flies among her burial gifts speaks volumes. The fly, a symbol of persistence and endurance, was a fitting emblem. Clearly, she was a formidable figure, and her example would later inspire other royal women with similar ambitions. One especially intriguing detail is Ahhotep's unique title, Mistress of the Shores of Ahhotep. Though this term later came to refer to Greece during the Ptolemaic era, its appearance here hints at a potential connection between Egypt's 18th dynasty and the Minoan civilization of Crete. That link seems more than coincidental. In addition to the golden flies, two of Ahhotep's burial items display Minoan-style artistry. Recent archaeological work at Hutweret strengthens the idea that the Egyptian royal family had established diplomatic ties with the Minoans, who at the time were the dominant naval power in the eastern Mediterranean. The royal palace built atop the ruins of the old Hyksos stronghold featured public chambers decorated with Minoan-style wall paintings. These frescoes mirror scenes found at sites like Thera and the palace at Knossos. Perhaps most intriguing is the depiction of a large griffin, a creature closely associated with Minoan royal symbolism. Its presence suggests the possibility of a dynastic marriage between Egypt and Minoan Crete. With his grandmother and mother suitably honored, Ahmose shifted focus to the current generation. Her elevation coincided with a pivotal moment in the royal family's life, the passing of Queen Mother Ahhotep and the birth of a royal heir. This new birth ensured dynastic continuity and gave Ahmose-Nefertari a new set of honors. She now held the same distinguished titles as her mother before her: king's daughter, king's sister, king's great wife, and now king's mother. But Ahmose had a new distinction in store for her. He appointed Ahmose-Nefertari as the god's wife of Ammonius, making her the female counterpart to the high priest of Ammonius and a key figure in the religious hierarchy. This title effectively placed her at the helm of the Ammonius priesthood alongside its male leader. This innovation was part of a broader reform of Egypt's religious institutions under Ahmose, and proved to be a brilliant strategic move. It secured two vital objectives. It granted the royal family direct influence over the Ammonius temple, and it established a strong theological link between the monarchy and the god Ammonius himself. To affirm this major shift, Ahmose erected another great stela at Ipitsut, recording the assets and authority he had bestowed upon Ahmose-Nefertari in her role as God's wife. She rose to the occasion. For the rest of her life, she embraced this sacred title above all others, cementing her place not only in religious leadership but also in Egyptian history. When King Ahmose passed away in 1514, still only in his 30s, Egypt had undergone a dramatic transformation. During the course of his reign, the nation had broken free from foreign domination, established itself as an emerging force in the Near East, reclaimed control over the lucrative Nubian gold mines, and suppressed internal unrest. The monarchy had reasserted its dominance at the top of the social and political order, forging a powerful alliance with the leading state religion. With these accomplishments, the groundwork for the grandeur of the new kingdom had been firmly laid. The next step was to build upon this solid foundation. That responsibility would fall to Ahmose's son and successor, Amenhotep I. Or more accurately, it would fall to the Queen Mother, as Ahmose's untimely death left the throne in the hands of another child king. Unlike during Ahmose's youth, however, Egypt was now at peace, allowing the royal court to devote its energies to an ambitious construction campaign, the scale of which had not been seen for generations. Before his death, Ahmose had already reopened the limestone quarries at Ainu, modern-day Tura, and boasted that blocks of stone were being transported by oxen from Phoenician lands. Under the rule of young Amenhotep I, extraction resumed at all the major quarrying sites and turquoise mining recommenced in the Sinai, an activity not seen since the reign of Amenemhat III, 2.5 centuries earlier. Across Egypt, the air once again rang with the sounds of workers. It was as though the days of the Pyramid Age had returned. This time, however, the emphasis shifted from tombs for the dead to temples for the living gods. For only the second time in Egypt's long history, the royal construction efforts centered on Thebes, the seat of the ruling dynasty. Since its rise to importance centuries earlier, the city had sprawled beyond the old Middle Kingdom walls. Still, living conditions remained cramped and unsanitary for most residents. Without any formal urban planning, neighborhoods had developed haphazardly, obscuring the original grid layout of the ancient town. Because agriculture remained the city's top priority, usable land was scarce, and houses were packed tightly into a labyrinth of narrow alleys. Basic comforts like space, fresh water, and shade were hard to come by in such a crowded urban environment. Families with the means often built upward, creating upper floors to add space, avoid flood damage during high Nile seasons, and escape the foul odors and trash accumulating at street level. The wealthiest inhabitants of Thebes moved beyond the congested city limits, establishing spacious villas along the edge of the desert. These homes often featured pleasure gardens and more comfortable surroundings. City dwellers, on the other hand, had to settle for the occasional breeze filtering through small grilles placed high on the walls, which were painted in reddish hues to reduce the sun's brightness. Overall, life in New Kingdom Thebes was noisy and overcrowded. And for those living nearest the Temple of Ammonius, the commotion was only about to intensify. During the 18th dynasty, the Temple of Ipitsut became the prime recipient of royal generosity. Originally established by the Theban 11th dynasty during the turmoil of civil war and later revered by the 12th dynasty, the temple naturally regained prominence under another Theban line ruling Egypt. Although the surviving structures from the Middle Kingdom were modest in size, their architectural elegance and intricate reliefs made a lasting impression on Amenhotep I's architects. Deeply moved by the beauty of Senusret I's monuments, they set out to replicate them for their own time. One such reproduction, a Jubilee Pavilion, mirrored Senusret's original so precisely that only the replacement of his name with Amenhotep's marked the difference. In front of the older temple from the 12th dynasty, a vast courtyard was constructed, centered around a massive pylon gate shaped like the hieroglyph for horizon. This courtyard became a symbolic recreation of the act of creation itself. Its walls bore images of the king making offerings to Ammonius and priests presenting tributes to the king, reflecting the fusion of divine and royal worship in one sacred space. At the heart of the courtyard stood a stunning alabaster shrine designed to house the sacred bark of Ammonius during ritual processions. Its decorations emphasized the mystical bond between the deity and the sovereign, even portraying the royal jubilee. Flanking the courtyard, smaller chapels contained royal statues, their interiors adorned with scenes of eternal offerings. Adjacent to the temple, a sacred slaughterhouse was added to provide sacrificial cattle for festivals and for the worship of Ahhotep I and his mother, Ahmose-Nefertari. Though presented as a grand new sanctuary for Ammonius, Amenhotep's projects at Ipitsut also served as a bold tribute to divine kingship. The inseparability of temple and monarchy was no accident. By aligning himself with the revered builders of the Middle Kingdom, Amenhotep subtly erased the memory of the chaotic period that preceded his reign. His construction projects at Ipitsut suggested an unbroken sacred lineage from the 12th dynasty to Ahmose's family. In true pharaonic fashion, Amenhotep I reshaped the historical narrative to suit his vision. His grand ambition extended beyond Ipitsut. In Egypt's symbolic landscape, the west and east banks of the Nile were seen as complementary, each playing a vital role in the spiritual balance of the world. On Thebes' west bank, traditionally a burial ground, the rulers of the 17th dynasty had constructed modest pyramids. But the area also carried ancient royal connotations. The dramatic cliffside amphitheater at Deir el-Bahri was believed to be a dwelling of Hathor, the mother goddess and guardian of pharaohs. This sacred symbolism likely resonated deeply with Amenhotep I, King Mentuhotep, who had emerged victorious from a previous civil war, had chosen this very site for his mortuary temple and a national tomb for fallen soldiers. The location's meaning was likely profound for Amenhotep, whose own dynasty had recently prevailed in another war. Moreover, the divine relationship between Hathor and the king mirrored his own bond with his mother, Ahmose-Nefertari. Their rule was not only authorized by the gods. To bring these concepts to life, Amenhotep ordered the construction of 2 chapels at Deir el-Bahri, one of which stood directly before Mentuhotep's temple. Additionally, he built a sanctuary designed to hold the bark of Ammonius during its annual journey across the Nile as part of the grand beautiful festival of the valley. Much like at Ipitsut, the inscriptions and decorative elements at Deir el-Bahri focused heavily on the royal cult, highlighting especially the significance of Ahmose-Nefertari and the eagerly awaited royal jubilee. Amenhotep also commissioned a temple for himself and his mother on the western Theban plain, positioned in front of the 17th dynasty's royal burial ground, where his father and grandmother had been laid to rest. Their legacy, enshrined in monumental architecture, was honored as the royal family now stood at the heart of Egypt's religious framework. Their temples and shrines rose along the horizon in every direction. Even after later rulers dismantled and repurposed their monuments, the names of Amenhotep I and Ahmose-Nefertari endured in the collective memory of Western Thebes. They came to be venerated as divine guardians of the region, particularly by a unique community known as the Place of Truth, now called Deir el-Medina. The founding of this village encapsulates the broader spiritual and architectural ambitions of Ahmose's lineage, reflecting their enduring influence on Egyptian civilization. By the time Amenhotep I ascended to power, the dangers of building monumental royal tombs had become all too clear. Such structures, while impressive, only served to advertise the king's final resting place to potential looters, undermining the goal of eternal peace. To safeguard the afterlife of future monarchs, a new approach was needed. As part of his extensive religious reforms, Amenhotep introduced a groundbreaking new model. The royal funerary complex would now be divided into 2 distinct components. A mortuary temple would be built in an open and accessible location to serve as a lasting tribute and a public center for royal worship. Meanwhile, the actual tomb would be hidden deep within the cliffs of western Thebes, carved into the rock and completely concealed from view to protect it from desecration. To maintain the secrecy of this hidden tomb, not only its location but also its workforce needed isolation. The solution was to create a secluded village in a remote valley, where the artisans and laborers could live apart from the general population. This ensured that the secrets of the royal tomb remained well guarded. Thus, the place of truth was established, with Ahhotep I and Ahmose-Nefertari as its divine patrons. Remarkably, this community thrived for 500 years, faithfully fulfilling its original purpose. Today, it stands as the richest source of knowledge about daily life during the New Kingdom. As for Ahmose-Hotep I's own burial site, its exact location remains unknown, even after more than a century of archaeological efforts. Unlike the tombs of his successors, which have become popular tourist destinations, Ahmose-Hotep's eternal home remains undisturbed. In this, as with so much else in his vision for the Egyptian kingship, his desires were realized.